Right now, tonight at 5, it's the breakthrough Bardstown's been waiting for, but tonight, not the one they expected. A true shocker of an arrest in the long mystery of what's happened to Crystal Rogers. Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining us. I'm Doug Proffitt. And it's left a lot of people asking, who is this man? Joseph Lawson. We know he's 32 years old and facing charges of conspiracy to commit murder and tampering with physical evidence. This is also the first arrest in this case, the first charges we've seen in the unsolved Bardstown cases. His charges specifically tie him to the case of Crystal Rogers. We have team coverage for you right now at 5. Travis Breeze is in Bardstown talking to folks. Shay McAllister is going to walk through the arraignment video. It's Joseph Lawson on camera and speaking.
Here in Nelson County, there is one big question on everyone's mind. Who is Joseph Lawson, the man now facing charges in connection to the disappearance of Crystal Rogers? Well, today we went into the courthouse to get new court documents spelling out exactly how Joseph Lawson may be connected to the night Crystal was murdered. From a hospital bed, 32-year-old Joseph Lawson called into his court arraignment. A Nelson County judge on the other end of the video.
Formal reading of the indictment has been effected. The court's going to enter pleas of not guilty in both cases.
Lawson was indicted by a grand jury in June, charged with conspiracy to commit murder and tampering with physical evidence. Both charges filed in connection to an incident on 4th of July weekend 2015. The same weekend, Crystal Rogers was reported missing, and just days before her keys, phone, and purse were found inside her car on the side of the Bluegrass Parkway. A warrant was issued for his arrest in July. It was executed in August, and he appeared in court via video on Thursday.
Is your date of birth January 24th of 1991?
Yes, sir.
The name may sound unfamiliar, but this actually isn't the first time we've heard the name Lawson come up in this investigation. Steve Lawson was mentioned in one of the very first police interviews between Detective John Snow and the main suspect in the case, Brooks Houck.
Okay, who is Steve Lawson? He's somebody that works for me.
Houck explaining why he had a late-night phone call with Steve on the night Crystal disappeared, even calling Steve from inside the interrogation room.
The other night you called me really late, and I forgot what you asked me. Can you?
Steve is heard telling Houck he had called him because he had a question for Crystal, which Houck says he had to call and ask her and would call him back.
So that begs a question in my mind.
All right.
If she's in the truck next to you when he called, why would you need to call her?
We've since learned Steve Lawson has a son named Joseph Lawson. We're still working to confirm if his son is the same man who was arrested and is now expected back in court in October. Joseph Lawson was arraigned in Nelson County Circuit Court on two different charges. In one, he's facing a $500,000 bond. In the other, it's $50,000. He is still in custody right now. In Nelson County, I'm Shay McAllister. WHAS11 on your side.
By the way, Shay today did speak with the Ballard family. They told us they have been instructed not to talk to the news media. Team Crystal, the group, did give us a statement which reads, "We are excited the FBI is moving forward, and this is huge for Sherry, her family, and the entire community." Taking a closer look at the timeline of the disappearance of Crystal Rogers, the sheriff's office initially handled Crystal's case beginning on July 3rd, 2015, when Crystal was last seen alive. Her boyfriend, Brooks Houck, told police that they had fed cows at the family farm that day and then went home together. He says the next morning she was gone. After months of searching on October 16, 2015, Ed Mattingly, who was the sheriff at the time, announced Crystal was presumed dead, and it was he who declared Brooks as the main suspect in the case. 18 months later, on November 19, 2016, Crystal's father, Tommy, was out hunting when somebody shot and killed him. He had been leading the search for her. His case is being investigated by Kentucky State Police. We're going to have more on Tommy's case in just a minute. There would be no new developments until the FBI took over Crystal's case in August of 2020. They've searched several properties, including the home of Brooks's brother, the former Bardstown police officer, Nick Houck, and the Houck family farm, where Crystal was last seen alive. Now tonight at 5, more of our team coverage for you. The reaction to this arrest has been huge. Most people had been focused on her ex-boyfriend, Brooks Houck, who was named early on by the sheriff as the chief suspect but never arrested. Since then, Bardstown has rallied around the family, making sure Crystal would not be forgotten. And that's where we join Travis Breeze and our senior photojournalist Alyssa Newton. They're live right now in Bardstown. Travis, you have been talking to people right now. Are they as surprised as the rest of us here? I'm sure they are, but what are they telling you about the news when they learned it?
Well, Doug, ever since we started first talking to people probably around 10:30, 11 a.m. this morning, they were just kind of waking up and hearing the news for the first time. One woman really had her breath taken away when we told her there was at least an arrest in the Crystal Rogers case. You definitely got the feeling that this entire town wants the case solved so that they can move on and focus on the things that they truly want to be known for.
I can't talk highly enough about this town, and it breaks my heart that what we're known for is something so horrible and heinous.
Tourists walking around Friday, taking in the bourbon capital of the world, while locals celebrated progress in one of the high-profile disappearances.
I think a lot of people here had started to feel like we were never going to get there.
Alyssa Davis was leaving brunch and was very happy to hear the news.
Would probably say the same, that it's just this huge relief to finally know that somewhere something is being done.
She, like many, thinks the Jason Ellis case and others are all connected. She hopes having Lawson in custody will lead to more arrests.
Until consequences are brought up, to people that have been involved, they're not going to turn on anybody else. Crystal did not deserve to not be here.
Others say the FBI taking over has made a big difference and feel we are close to a bigger breakthrough.
I had a feeling it was just a matter of time, and here it is. Hopefully we'll hear more.
They have no doubt the news will spread fast, and they hope progress in the case and progress for the community do as well.
I want to see Bardstown back to kind of being what I knew it growing up, which was a safe and really pretty place to grow up.
We did show Joseph Lawson's photo to a few people while we were out. None of them said that he looked very familiar, but we do know that he is a Nelson County resident. Live in Bardstown, Travis Breeze, WHAS11 on your side.
Travis, thank you very much. While Crystal Rogers is one of the bigger unsolved cases in Bardstown, it's not the only one. There's 4 other cases that are being investigated by authorities. The first was in May of 2013, as you know, when Bardstown, Kentucky police officer Jason Ellis was ambushed and killed on his way home at 2 in the morning on a holiday weekend there. Then in 2014, Kathy and Samantha Netherland were found murdered in their home on Springfield Road in Bardstown. Kathy was a special education teacher and Samantha was her 16-year-old daughter. Crystal Rogers disappeared then in 2015, causing search parties across the area. Her father, Tommy Ballard, was heavily involved in finding out what happened to her, aggressively leading the search. And in 2016, 16 months after Crystal Rogers disappeared, Ballard was fatally shot in Bardstown while preparing to take his grandson deer hunting on his own property. The FBI is handling the investigation for Officer Ellis, Tommy Ballard, and of course, Crystal Rogers. Well, joining me live right here at 5 to explain these charges and what they tell us next is Nick Mudd of the Mudd Legal Group. He's also a former assistant Jefferson County Commonwealth's attorney in the Violent Crimes Unit. So, Nick, Lawson comes out of the blue to us, a name we'd never seen before, not talked about. The charge conspiracy, what is that telling us right off the bat?
It's a charge that's not very utilized in state court, but it tells us right off the bat that there's another person involved. If you look at the statute, look at the law on it, that law implicates more than one person. So that means there's probably charges coming for someone else in the future.
I wouldn't have been surprised today if the FBI swept in there and made more arrests. That did not happen. But do you think that's how this case is going to progress now? I mean, how do you see it play out as a former prosecutor?
It's hard to tell without looking at the discovery, which is the evidence in the case. That will be forthcoming. I think there will be a question of whether or not that will be publicly available or not. But going forward, I think that will indicate who or what other person was involved. And certainly the crime of criminal conspiracy with any charge lends itself to an additional person being charged. So going forward, it wouldn't surprise me if more people are charged involved in this.
You say investigating cold cases is very hard because of the name of it. The longer they go on, the harder it is to solve. So What impresses you about this move that just happened this week?
You know, cold cases are extremely difficult. I handled a number when I was a prosecutor. I handled them as a defense lawyer. As cases go on, people forget. You know, witnesses forget things. They forget what they saw. Things get lost. And so for a cold case to be brought, indicted, and charged someone with, especially a crime, a serious crime like this, means there must be some smoking gun. There had to have been some breakthrough in the evidence for them to look at the evidence, bring it to a grand jury, and ultimately indict an individual with 2 serious felonies.
As an attorney and someone who's looked over investigations, let's go back to when Sheriff Mattingly named Brooks Houck as the chief suspect in this case, but he's never been arrested. Did you find that to be an unusual move, that a law enforcement officer would come out and say, here's the guy we think did it, but then so far to this day, nobody's been arrested except for Joseph Lawson?
Generally, you know, the police do not name their prime suspect in an investigation because it's just that, it's an investigation. So that's an odd move typically. I know most officers that deal with, they're dealing with homicides or serious cases, don't come right out and, you know, and say who their prime suspect or prime target is. They gather the evidence, present it before a grand jury before making those claims public.
We last heard from the FBI October 2022 when they spent 5 days on the Houck family farm there, and they had been excavating a driveway in the area of a neighborhood. So as you see the next steps in this case, how do you see it playing out?
It's difficult to say without looking at the actual evidence, but that being said, the fact that the charge was not charged as murder, it charges criminal conspiracy to commit murder. So, you know, it wouldn't be uncommon for plea deals to happen, prosecutors wanting this individual to make statements in exchange for a plea deal, that type of thing. That's not uncommon in cases involving these kind of charges.
How do you think this case stayed so quiet? If we now see a possible conspirator involved in this, other people were involved, how'd they keep it quiet so long?
You know, that's a good question, and that's the question we all want to know the answer to. Certainly, all of us want to see the evidence in the case and see what led them to this and why are we here years later suddenly with a serious indictment before this individual.